On the edge of a small village, perched atop a lonely hill, stood an old creaking house that had seen better days. Its paint was peeling, its windows fogged with age, and the wild vines that clung to its walls whispered secrets to the wind. This was the home of 12-year-old Sam, a boy whose life was woven with shadows. His face and body bore the scars of a fire that had engulfed him when he was just 5, leaving him with deep burns and a body that moved with a painful limp. His grandmother Erica was his only companion, a fierce protector who often reminded him that beauty was not defined by appearances. The village kids had always kept their distance, whispering tales of a haunted house and the monster that lived within. They teased, laughed, and pointed, convinced that the boy in the house was as terrifying as the stories suggested. With every jeer and every snicker, Sam felt the walls of his world grow tighter. School had become unbearable, and after a few months of enduring the laughter and rejection, he decided to stay home, hidden away with his books and the memories of a life before the fire. On Halloween, the village was alive with laughter and excitement. Children donned costumes of all shapes and sizes, their faces painted like ghouls, witches, and superheroes. As the sun dipped low, casting an orange glow over the hills, a group of particularly mischievous boys gathered near the base of Sam's hill. They were armed with plans to scare him, to prove to themselves that they could conquer the fears they had been fed for years. "Let's go to the haunted house," one of them shouted, bravado fueling his voice. "But what if he sees us?" Another hesitated, glancing up the hill where the darkened windows seemed to stare back. "Nah, he's probably hiding. Just a freak, come on." They all laughed, egging each other as they trudged up the rocky path. As they reached the top, Sam sat in his room reading a book about knights and dragons, a world far removed from his own. He didn't hear the boys approaching until their laughter broke the stillness of his home. He looked up, his heart racing, wondering if they would dare to come any closer. Suddenly one of the boys shouted, "Hey, monster, we brought you a treat," and tossed a rotten pumpkin over the fence. Sam's heart sank. He recognized the tones. He had heard them before. He wanted to ignore them, to hide away beneath his blankets, but something within him flickered, a longing for connection, for friendship, despite the pain of rejection. Gathering his courage, he opened his window slightly, enough to let out a whisper, "Leave me alone." Just then a commotion erupted as one of the boys, Jake, stumbled and lost his balance. In an instant he was tumbling toward the ancient well that stood at the edge of Sam's yard, hidden by overgrown weeds and shadows. The laughter turned to screams as Jake fell, splashing into the murky water below. "Jake!" the boys shouted, panic erupting in their voices as they rushed to the edge of the well. They peered down, horrified to see their friend struggling against the water, his cries echoing upward. In that moment, all thoughts of revenge vanished, replaced by a primal fear. The boys turned and fled down the hill, leaving Jake behind. Sam's heart raced as he heard the commotion. He had spent so long in isolation that the sound of anyone in distress stirred something deep within him. He couldn't just stand by. He grabbed a sturdy rope that his grandmother had kept for repairs, his hands trembling not from fear but from determination. He rushed to the well, peering over the edge. "Jake!" he called, trying to keep his voice steady. "Hold on, I'm coming." Jake's head bobbed just above the surface, panic-stricken eyes searching the darkness above. "Help! Get me out of here!" Taking a deep breath, Sam secured the rope around the sturdy post near the well, his heart thudding in his chest. "I'm going to throw this down. Grab it." He flung the rope down, watching as it landed just out of Jake's reach. "You have to swim over to it." With sheer desperation, Jake managed to paddle toward the rope, clenching it tightly when he finally reached it. Sam's hands shook as he pulled, feeling the strain of his small body against the weight of Jake. "Hold on, I won't let you go." With every ounce of strength, Sam pulled until he felt the weight shift, and finally Jake emerged, drenched and gasping, clinging to the rope. With one final heave, Sam pulled him to safety, and Jake tumbled onto the ground, coughing and sputtering. The moment they were free from the well, a heavy silence settled. Sam looked at Jake, whose face was streaked with mud and fear. The other boys stood at a distance, their faces pale with shock. Sam could hear their whispers, unsure of what to say or do. Why did you help me?" Jake asked, his voice shaky as he pushed himself up. "Because it's the right thing to do," Sam replied, surprising even himself with the steadiness of his voice. "You were in trouble." The boys now huddled together, watching with wide eyes. Sam's heart pounded, knowing that their perceptions of him were shifting in real time. It was a moment he had never anticipated, a bridge forming between his world and theirs. "I'm sorry for what we did," Jake stammered, his voice thick with embarrassment. "I didn't mean to. I was just trying to be brave." "Brave isn't about scaring people," Sam said softly, his gaze steady. "It's about helping others, even if they look different." The other boys exchanged glances, the fear that had once kept them at bay now replaced by a strange sense of kinship. They approached cautiously, Jake leading the way. Can we be friends?" Sam's heart fluttered at the possibility. "You mean it?" "Yeah," Jake said, his eyes earnest. "You saved my life. I was wrong to judge you." The silence that hung in the air felt transformative. Sam took a tentative step forward, and the other boys joined him, their apprehension melting away. They began to talk, sharing stories and laughter, finding common ground beyond their differences. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the hill, Sam realized that he had not only rescued Jake, but had also freed himself from the chains of solitude. The laughter of children filled the air, echoing against the haunted walls of his home, transforming the darkness into light. From that day forward, the village began to see Sam differently. No longer just a boy with the scars, he became a friend. A reminder that true beauty resides in kindness, courage, and the connections we forge with one another. The stories of the haunted house faded, replaced by tales of friendship and bravery. And as Sam looked out from his hill, he understood that sometimes it takes a leap into the unknown to discover the light within.